In recent months, I've been spending a lot of time power winging. I've tested a whole host of different wings from different companies. I'm getting a really good idea of what's good and what's not so good. Today, I'm going to be doing a full review and comparison of the D-Wing from Flow. Have I left the best one to last? Well, if you stick around, I'll answer that question. Welcome to the channel. My name's Gav and we're going to do a deep dive into the D-Wing. So far in power winging, I think the biggest engineering challenge is keeping the lines relatively short, enabling you to pack away, but at the same time as having stability when it's overpowered in the gusts. Now this is where the D-Wing shines above the rest, but it's also got some amazing other features which I'm going to dive into right now. So over the last few months, I've come up with 10 factors that I think are really important to a power wing that help the user interface, but also increase performance. So I'm going to cover off each one of them with the D-Wing and identify where it excels and where perhaps it falls slightly short. So without further ado, let's get into point number one. So having tangled lines, I'm afraid, is an occupational hazard of power winging. Yes, I thought the days of kite mares were well and truly behind me, but unfortunately they're back with a vengeance. So the designers at Flow have identified this problem and decided to color each set of lines differently. This makes untangling so much easier, especially if in the water. The main thing I hate about tangling is that it takes time away from actually doing the sport, which is incredibly frustrating. The great thing about the D-Wing is that this is standard across the range, so you get to know exactly which lines are colored which colors. For example, I know that the yellow lines are the brake lines at the back. It's super easy to identify them and untangle them if required. A super top tip is to attach a leash to the brake lines at the back. This stops the bar from getting tangled up. Since I've done this, I've had almost zero tangles. It's highly recommended. So on the same theme of colored lines, they've also gone for very colored canopy. Now, the great thing about this is you can identify the leading edge instantaneously, but it's also a really bright canopy for safety reasons. Conversely, this is a different system to the lines where each size has a different color, so it's easily identifiable when it's in the bag. The colors of the leading edge means that it's super easily identifiable. You can pick it up, throw it up in the air, and before you know it, you're up and riding. I think this will be the future of power winging. I don't think one colors are going to be a thing anymore. I really hope all brands jump on this bandwagon. It becomes an industry standard. It makes such a difference when you're in the water. Stability in flight is critical because it means you don't have to constantly keep an eye on your power wing. You know it will sit there, and the D-Wing is rock solid. Irrespective of whether you're locked in with a harness or holding it with one hand, you can have confidence that it sits there and doesn't move. So obviously the sacrifice of stability is maneuverability, but to be honest with you, that's not what I'm looking for in a power wing. I want it to sit there, help me go upwind so that I can enjoy the loops nice and easily. In fact, I'd say that this is one of the biggest advantages that the D-Wing has over other power wings, is that as soon as you throw it up in the air and fly it on the beach, you'll notice how rock solid it is. Big thumbs up, I'm a big fan of this. Being able to go upwind as quickly and as efficiently as possible is the main reason why I got into power winging. For me, power wings that don't go upwind very well are frustrating because it takes away time from you actually downwinding itself. Now the D-Wing has a very high aspect ratio to it in compared to other wings that I've used, and it sits really far forward in the wind window, which helps you drive upwind. Also, when it's overpowered, it sits even further upwind, so when a gust hits, it rockets you into the eye of the wind, exactly what you want it to do. You can see there's a bit of an ongoing theme here with the D-Wing. So far, it's ticking a lot of the boxes that I'm after with a power wing. So hand in hand with being able to go upwind really well is being able to handle gusts. And again, this is where the D-Wing excels. This has been an ongoing problem with power wings so far, is that when a gust hits, you depower and then it becomes very boisterous. This reduces the wind range that you can use your power wing, but it also makes going upwind a bit of a headache. The power wing seems to sit on the front lines when you depower it, which flutters the rest of the canopy, completely taking away all lift, and it makes the power wing sit further forward in the wind window. Of course, the steering drops off slightly when you do that, but all it takes is a little tweak, and before you know it, you've got it back under control again. I've used the 3 meter in 35 knots and I felt extremely comfortable, and I cannot say that about the other Parawings I've used so far. It also pairs really nicely with a harness, which is the riding style that I really like. It means that you can relax, rest, and enjoy the upwind phase, and then put all your effort into downwinding. So next is the ability to turn and control your Parawing. Look, there has to be a compromise somewhere, and where you've got a wing that goes upwind really well, has a good aspect ratio and is stable, well, you're gonna have to suffer on turnability. Now, I'm not saying the D-Wing is bad at turning, it's just not quite as good as some of the other ones that I've used. But for me, that's a compromise I'm willing to accept for the other features that it excels in. So it goes without saying that if you can't pack your Parawing away, then it's really no good, and some are better than others. In fact, the BRM is probably the best for packing away that I've come across so far. So for the D-Wing, the pack away is not quite in the same league as the BRM. I don't think anything is matched, but it's always a way up between the longevity of the material, like how thin it is, and its ability to pack away. So the D-Wing that I've got are pre-production, and they're using 38 gram Skytex for the material in the Canopy. They've elected for the actual productions to reduce that down to 32 grams Skytex. So it'll be really interesting to see how that improves the pack away. So that all being said, packing away the D-Wing into the bag itself, completely getting rid of it hands-free, is not a problem in the smaller sizes, as you can imagine. It just becomes a handful in the 5.5. To be honest with you, as my Parawinging has progressed, I'm electing to hold it in my hand rather than pack it away and be hands-free more and more. The reason for this is that I'm finding that the main reason it gets tangled is when I mess around with it trying to pack it away into its bag. Holding it in one hand and downwinding is not a hindrance. In fact, it means deploying it is much easier, and you can do it at the drop of a hat. In an ideal world, you'd have a Parawing that packs away into a small ball, disappears completely, but the reality of it is something like that probably won't last very long. So I think Flow have got a really good balance between performance and longevity, and I'm really looking forward to using their lighter wings in the future. Now on to the redeploy, which is a key point, because if it goes wrong at this point, you're simply just falling in at the bottom of the run and just wasting time. So stability and organizations are the key points here. And as I mentioned earlier on, the stability of the D-Wing is a standout feature. It almost wants to correct itself and fly directly up into the wind window, giving you direct drive as soon as you need it. Now, as a top tip for redeploying, rather than just throwing it out in front of you, I found that just dangling it by the side of you, giving it some shakes, allows it to untwist itself, and then it naturally comes up into the wind window. So I touched on this briefly, but the wind range of Parawings has been pretty poor up until now. Look, the lower end, I think, is more to do with skill and gear. Obviously, the more time you spend on the Parawing, the better you'll get. But very skillful pros will be able to get up in almost no wind whatsoever. Now, the upper end is different. That comes down to the performance of the gear and your ability to depower. And as I mentioned earlier on, this is a standout feature for the D-Wing. The so what of this is that the wind range of the D-Wings is much wider than other Parawings I've used so far. And the great thing about this, it means you don't need to buy a full quiver to be able to get on the water in most conditions. Big thumbs up, less money spent, I'm happy. And then lastly, the point that most people are talking about is that the price of Parawings is extremely expensive right now. This is mainly because it's quite hard to mass produce Parawings at the moment, and there's a lot of R&D going into it. The smaller companies are having to really gamble, and as a result of it, they're gonna have to have a price point that makes it worth their while. Now, obviously, as time goes on, the second-hand market gets better, this is all gonna reduce, but the D-Wing is coming at a very lowball price, which is really good considering how impressive its performance is. All right, I think you can tell from that list how impressed I've been with the D-Wing so far. Considering its price point, it packs a huge amount of performance and delivers on almost every element that's important to me. Yes, I'm sure there'll be lots of development with Parawings as we go forward, but right now in this snapshot of time, I think the D-Wing is one of the best on the market. Look, I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you got something out of it. Please let me know in the description below and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. All right, see you on the water again soon.